All right, we're going to get started here with our August author jam with our esteemed colleagues here, Dave, Ryan, Tennyson, and Carol. And we've been discussing before we started the session what we might want to talk about and what's on our minds today. So I think, Dave, you kind of summarized a moment ago what you think we may want to chat about.
Yeah, Carol's going to be leading a workshop in a few hours, I guess, from now, which is part of the process that Steve Cady launched about a year ago. Based on the question, could a new or revised doctoral education in OD and change the world, make the world a better place, have the clout, if a person possessed that doctorate, to bring about, well, in my view, more successful change than if you didn't have the doctorate. Otherwise, why have it? So that's my facetious summary of it. Ryan, what do you think?
Well, the question that came to mind is because I'm coming to the practice as a practitioner, not yet considering matriculation through the doctoral path.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the value proposition to me as a practitioner? How does it help my practice in change to have the level of knowledge and theory and ability to articulate that theory to people who care? And so the question, well, should I go for a doctoral matriculation, or should I continue practice deeply and be an autodidact?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know.
What did you say via what?
Autodidact.
An autodidact to educate myself, self-taught based on my network of practitioners, right? So if I can engage with other practitioners who I feel that I can learn from and be an apprentice to, and do that as I kind of have been over the last year and a half, what is the additional value to me and as a PhD, and that what's it, what I hate to say it that way, but what's in it for me to be a doctoral?
Yeah, because it's a substantial investment of your time and money, as Lisa knows. What do you think, Tennyson?
Yeah, I'll play in a little bit. I appreciate what you just said. And how do you pronounce your name again? Is it Ryan?
It's Ryan.
Ryan.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I just appreciate what you said. I come in also as a practitioner. Once upon a time, I had some thoughts of, oh, I'm working at a university now. I should get a PhD while I'm here. And I ended up choosing not to do that. I don't have serious regret about that. It just is on life goes. So I don't know about your question, Dave. I think like any of us called to the experiences or the learning that feels compelling, I think is useful. And for those who do that through advanced education, awesome. For those who do it through a small community of practitioners, great, or a large community of practitioners. So I think I have to reframe the question a little bit, at least based on some of my own life path of wherever there is valuable learning, that matters, or valuable connection, that matters. So, you know, in my life, I've tended to come into the reality of networks of people that I both learn and work with. Some of those are more deliberate communities of practice. Some of those are best friends. Some of those are casual acquaintances, and we connect in a temporary coherence together. So, you know, it's easy to get into a broad philosophy here. And I think that education matters, and I think that experience matters. And I think the feelings of the belly matter also, because some are called deeply into the academic world and the details of research and the details of practice. And some are called to play with shit real time, improv, and and many things in between. So I think we're also living in a time of great societal change, and the world of higher education and academia is not uninfluenced by all of that. So I think in every sector of contemporary society, we are called to challenge and recreate or reimagine who we are. And some of that means some deep, painful initiatory experience. And some of that means, gosh, we're just living a life of experimentation. So I don't know quite how to land into the specifics of the question that you asked, Dave, but those are some of the things that I'm oriented to as a practitioner, with some mix of rigor and discipline and imagination around the field of change.
Yeah, no, that
It
was
matters
elegant.
to gather as a group of 6 people in the world, and sometimes it matters to put 6 years of extra education behind you and go with the colleagues of that.
Yeah,
So
go ahead, Carol.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to welcome Yashim and find
Hi,
this extremely interesting. And I'm going to frame it so that we get Yashim up to date very quickly, because I find it curious that, except for Dave, who is a lifetime educator focused on practice, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 basic practitioners having a conversation about an event that is very deeply motivated by Dr. Katie's passion. And he initiated this project that's going on at the Academy, which, as Tennyson said, is sort of on the extreme end of the theoretical place traditionally compared to the practice space. And his overall message to the OD&C scholarly community is a call to make OD a profession, and recognizes this is the fundamental start of what's going to happen here, that HR has a profession, IO Psych has a profession, and OD is so practice oriented and what the world needs now, and the Academy isn't there. So the initiative that he started a year ago, and this PDW that's happening tomorrow, and that was not my intention of coming on this call at all, but I think it's really quite relevant, is how do you integrate really rigorous research, which I think is in the action research realm, not in the scholarly realm that Tennyson, you chose not to take up. And Ryan, you're suggesting you're not sure there's a value proposition for it. And I've heard Yashim say, I'm really a practitioner. And yet in the world of real knowledge transfer, I think you're doing the important work. So the challenge is, how do you integrate the evidence-based, valuable part of the Academy? And the definition of a scholar is not even in the conversation. At best, it's scholar practitioner. And I couldn't imagine a better time for Dr. Katie to arrive.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
So that's really what, Steve, we've just, because nobody had a burning question, Dave started with talking about the PDW. And
Well-
we're sitting on on this call with 1, 2, 3, 4 absolutely committed practitioners, one lifelong academic, and I'd say you and I are in that interim. What are we calling the scholar practitioners?
Hmm.
And Yashim came late and hasn't said a word, so I would suggest that she check in and then you can take it from there. And Lisa took over to start it.
Let me
Wait.
throw a quick piece in here about this theory. We've mentioned theory a couple of times, and the thought that comes to me is sort of like we are what we eat, and we are what theory we have and imbibe. In other words, working without theory at all is from the gut. And as Ryan said, the gut's pretty damn good when when you feel the pull of a calling. But what the Academy of Management is all about in many ways is a body of knowledge in various sectors of the Academy. And we have one too, a division called Organization Development and Change, led by not led by David Bright, but who is very much involved in what Carol's about to do and Steve has worked on. So I'm just concerned about how much more difficult coming in and helping an organization through a change process is likely to be. And if we do it with an outdated or weak body of theory to draw from, we're winging it, and I don't think it's going to work. So I've been part of this process and supportive of it, because I think that along with a doctorate comes the consolidation of the best theory that a particular school and faculty can put together for those people who come in and spend their time and money to be with them. And so I think it's a win-win. The practitioner who gets the doctorate should have eaten a lot richer menu of theoretical offerings, models, principles, all of that. And further, once they're out there in the mix of the messes, they can bring back what's really going on and stimulate the theorists, because now they're in the club, if you will, because they have the degree that says, yeah, I hang out with theorists and I hang out with real people. So anyway, Lisa.
Well, I thought we
You-
were going
you
to try to
are
get
We're
Yashim in here.
Yashim-
Yashim?
You are our test case because you've just finished a doctorate.
No,
Well,
she-
no.
I mean, a master's degree.
Okay. So Yashim, I can jump in first and then hopefully just make sure that you're all set when you want to talk. But when it comes to the value of a doctorate, in my mind, just because I'm less on the practitioner side from an OD standpoint, like, officially, and I've gotten my master's, is a few things. And I don't think like it's to practice, you have to have one. Clearly you don't. But I agree with you on going through my master's, the theories and such that I came closer to, because who is going for these master's and or doctorate degrees, they're not necessarily coming from that academic background. We were all over the place, right? So there's just a whole host of things that to me made us more call it relevant in what I do with software. If I've got a group of folks across all kinds of disciplines coming together, talking about the different ways that change impacts us, and then we're going through that evidence-based learning together, the concept of community, I think that might have been Tennyson that brought that up, and the connection. And I think that sharing of logic needs to happen more. And so whether we call it a doctorate, to me, it's just the actions that you go through to create that common understanding, and then you're putting those people out in the world. And whether or not they just have an influence on practitioners that don't have a doctorate, or they just create the community like we have here in these sessions, I think that's very critical, because changes continues to accelerate, and it's not going to wait for us if we don't come together in some fashion. And so maybe the doctorate is the way to do it. I can't say for sure, but I just feel like even just observing some of the doctoral cohorts, they're doing the same things we did in the master's degree, from the standpoint of learning, bringing their experience, and then creating a community that could be much more impactful than I might be able to individually. So that's my initial thought. So Yeshin,
well put.
thank you. Do you need any kind of assistance there before you make any comments, Yashim?
No, it's really nice to be here. See you all. Sorry, I'm a bit late, and I'm trying to understand what the conversation is about.
Yeah.
And I think what you are talking about on a broad, broad context is academic versus practitioner interaction or relationship, or how they relate to each other in terms of OD.
So to add to that, Yashim, we were getting very specific of, can a doctoral OD&C or a doctorate in OD&C be a way to essentially change the world? It's kind of what Dr. Katie is working on right now, is that part of the impetus that lets us have more impact in the world. So that's how I would put it. But Carol, if you can clarify,
That's good and a little bit narrow. I think what his call to action is that the doctoral programs have to meet what the world needs. And I don't think we want to forget what Tennyson said. It's not one size fits all, but a doctorate in the traditional way that you don't apply, you study theory and then put more knowledge out, but you're not in the world. In Dr. Katie's view, for OD&C, people who are doing change is not realistic going forward. And he's walked his talk, right? Because he's initiated this new program. So he's saying, I've sort of proven that it works. And how do we get that out into the world? And Dave, who's been part of the work up till now, says, I'm a bridge between them. I'm doing podcasts on practice, but I've lived my whole life in the academy. And so I'm raising the question, how do you integrate them? And then the value proposition for the university, in my opinion, is not insignificant. If they don't respond to Ryan's question, why should I go? There will be no students for doctoral programs. So it's really a both and, not neither or. Did that make sense?
To me, yes, absolutely. So I have got a few things to perhaps suggest. So for me, as you know, I come from a conflict resolution background, which is a part of OD. There's always conflict in OD, and I call it OD, but yeah, sorry, I call it conflict. Some people call it a change. Some people call it dialogue. It doesn't matter. It's the same. It's all about the same thing. So I'm a practitioner through and through, and but I am myself in this country, in the UK, a part of a community very much like this one. I'm a part of a community, an institute called Conflict Analysis and Research Center, which is a part of a university. But all of us are practitioners, and the university wanted us there as senior research fellows, because what they do is, for example, if a student is doing a master's degree on, say, I don't know, as the peace negotiations in Sri Lanka, they want us to look into it as practitioners. And I see those documents all the time, and I love them. I love looking at academic work, because academics have a frame that really, well, sometimes I don't have that clear frame sometimes, and I need the theory, and I need to put the knowledge out, as you just said, Carol. I sometimes need that. And then what they need from me, I'm only talking about my own institute. I'm not talking about any particular group. It's just, sorry, I'm not particular. It's not a general comment. This is about this particular group. And what they want from me is for me to look at whether these things would work in reality. So I'll give you a very specific example. One of the things that we do a lot on the ground is to look at business community, because people think peace negotiations are just between leaders, whereas economy has a big element in that, as an economy has a big features there a lot, and often academics don't add any business people interaction within conflict in there. So you know, things like that we pick up, or sometimes looking at sometimes it's too convoluted, sometimes it's too detailed, sometimes it's not detailed enough. So and which is because of that interaction, my work is enriched, definitely, because I learn more about the theory. Even though I have the degree and the masters and all of that, I'm still a very much hands-on practitioner. And I think they tell me that they learn because I have a very practical suggestions, that's what their feedback to me. And what I'm seeing is that what Steve is doing is something very, very similar. So I think it has huge value.
Great.
Wow, I love the idea of that institute. That's I'm sure there are models like that here in the States, but I haven't come across one, and it seems to me to be the what the Academy of Management needs to be looking at very carefully. That is, have higher education, which most of those members are part of, form working partnerships with clusters of practitioners whose actual performance in the field and what they're learning is a place to test and to spawn theory, which is best done in the academy, because there's a certain amount of safety in the academy to work with ideas, test them out theoretically, play with them, and then put them out there. But having that practice approach that you bring, Azmin, could save a really good theory from being unused, because it ignored, for example, that there's an economy involved in conflict resolution, or anything else that might have been missed. And that person now feels like a failure because, I put this thesis together, it was published. I don't know why anyone's isn't using it. It's brilliant. And then someone looks at it and says, no, you got it published. The Journal Review Committee thought it was brilliant. But if your intention was to have it put in the minds and hands of people who are doing the work, it's got a lot of flaws. So
Sorry, Ryan, just one very, very quick. Actually, we get involved in the thesis much earlier than the very last stage, so that
That's right.
Yeah. Sorry, Ryan. Yeah.
No, I think that's tying right in what you said, Yashim, to that because I'm on the outside, right? And that my desire is to inform the development of theory through practice, and that would be so enriching for me as a practitioner to be able to say I was contributing to the creation of theory that I can use in practice. And I don't know that there's necessary, maybe that's in community practice being involved in the action research. But my perception of it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the barrier to entry is that you have to have the doctoral degree before you are allowed into the community of practice of theory development, which and please correct me if I'm, like I said, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that to me feels like, okay, well, in order for me to enrich my practice and contribute to theory development, that, well, I got to go through the 6-7 years of that and take the economic hit that I wouldn't have in practice. So again, that's the cost benefit analysis that I do in the current state, and maybe that's what Dr. Katie is endeavoring to change.
So I wanted to add one thing that just came to mind when Yashim spoke, was just the value of that being a practitioner and bringing kind of that realism, I feel like, to the theory and the evidence base. I feel like it's a chicken or egg with what you're talking about, Ryan, of which comes first to contribute to it. But bottom line was, it was just, what's the value proposition to a practitioner? What's the value proposition to someone like me who hasn't been a practitioner? So I don't know if you are the sages and guides that tell someone like me who had no exposure to OD&C to say, maybe you look into a master's and or doctorate if you want to be in an industry and be doing more OD&C. And then that's the impact there. So it just separated in my mind. What's the value proposition to a practitioner versus a value proposition to someone who's maybe never been exposed and needs to have some of that evidence based? Because I can definitely tell you, if I was trying to convince firms that we work with for me to be their change agent, they want to know why they should trust me. Why do I? Yeah. So
perfect point. And what we have, I've been in higher ed for 50 years, and essentially I supported the business of selling credentials. Really. What's our product? Well, I love to say it's smarter people, connected, better networks, all the rest. And I believe that's true. But the crass point is credentialing. And therefore, there's a bit of exclusion going on there. We'll have to exclude people who cannot afford the cost and time to earn that credential. And Tennyson mentioned that higher ed has to be changing too. I know enough about it, even though I've been away from it 7 years in direct sense. I know that when enrollments are down, you name it, you name the field, except for there's a few. Everyone wants to be an AI person now for some weird reason. But it could create an appetite for change among the sort of credential sellers in the higher ed field. It might weaken their hold on the idea that we're so good and have such a great reputation in the world, we don't have to change a thing. People will come to us. And my sense of a lot of the people who were in the conversations that Steve led was, we don't quite believe that anymore. And there are a whole hell of a lot of people who are doing great work without the credential. But if we can bring people doing great work in the credentialing together in a new way, using some creativity to do it, which is what I think our Steve Katie team is working on, I think we can have the best of both worlds. last point, the program that I'm aware of at Bowling Green, both the master's and the doctorate, have people who have all kinds of experiences, all kinds of titles, and they haven't had to go through some kind of a sieve to come in and be ODC people. They see that among all the things they've learned, there's a lot of need for change, and organization level change is what's required. So they want to become better at that, no matter, even if they keep doing whatever they've done before, but they're going to do it with a different outlook and with more comfort in reaching for a book or joining a seminar like we're having, because they've lived in the academic world long enough to know that there are some really good things there that they don't want to miss. Not that I have an opinion on that.
So Dr. Katie, are you just observing today? And you're muted.
I'm here. I had to reboot and reset and reboot and reset and reboot and reset. I don't even know what happened, but it's working now.
Sounds like life.
Yeah, it does.
The lesson in life.
So it's good to see everybody. Yeah. So it's good to be here. I don't want to disrupt the flow of logic. I could just check in, which would probably be random, or I can jump on board.
Well, it's mostly been about everything you're working on, the doctoral OD&C and its importance in the world. And it's important. We've been talking a lot about the value proposition to say a practitioner versus to someone like me who hasn't been in practice, came in, we'll say newer, as well as a flurry of other great points about it, things that surround it, community, the evidence-based knowledge.
Yeah, I think we have a wonderful opportunity, and I do have a sense that I don't know what's going to shift this work so that we kind of elevate it as an integrated systemic solution for all things in the world. I don't know. I've watched the move. I've been privy to a few things. So I feel like I have sort of a perspective that's unique because I've had a chance to work with the elders back in the 90s, which was kind of that as they were kind of, and then, work with the OD program, and then with NTL, be on the board NTL, being connected into Tavistock, ISODC, which was OD Institute back in the day with Don Cole, which you may not know Don Cole, but I worked with him, and ODJ, and then JABS and NTL and stuff like that. So I see all this stuff. I've been in board meetings. I was on the board for OD&C board up until 2 years ago. I was on the board for ISODC. So I've been like on different boards and stuff. So I got a perspective. I don't even know how to share all of that. And sometimes I worry, like, if this is going to sound weird, so please, I don't know how to say this other than I worry if I die. Because I haven't had a chance to, there's another 10 years or 50, there might be another 20 years of work I personally have to do to help us create a platform that can create what I would call an established network for our field and practice, like the martial arts. I love the martial arts. So I'm testing to be a red belt today. I'm nervous about it. And I do with my son. And I've always been fascinated by how you've got the martial arts as an umbrella, and then you've got all the different arts, and then you've got blended arts like Aikido that came out in the 50s, right? It emerged from mixing and matching. And I look at that network, and I look at how it's established, and it influences our world in so many ways. Kids are taking it, people. It's positively influencing our world, So I think we got to do something that establishes this work broadly at the next level. I think it's going to happen. I'm committed to it, and we'll stay with it. The doctoral PDW at the OD network is sort of my little way of doing something different. I was trying to think of what can I do that we haven't do, because I've been at all these gatherings and you all know the different things. So I was like thinking, what is it that's different? Well, if we look back what happened in the 50s, and I got a book, I just got it in. Somebody was mentioning it, so I looked it up. It's this book here. It's called Personal Organizational Change Through Group Methods. It's by Edgar Schein and Warren Bennis.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to read what they said. This is so funny. You're going to laugh. I got one thing that I just got it. And you can't find it. I paid $150 for it. If you find another copy, it's going to be 500 or 700. There's like one other copy of it that you can find floating around. And they said, you find the thing where they said it's, I'm going to laugh.
I feel like we need some ominous music here.
Yeah, definitely. Pick up that guitar, Ryan, and start playing.
At least a drum roll.
You all are going to particularly appreciate this one. It's right up front. I'll find it right here. Take me just a second.
In the 50s, both of those gentlemen were probably in their 20s or 30s. They were young. And they were feeling strongly about leadership and everything thereto pertaining. And
They're
so
both on the timeline
mm-hmm.
as the founders.
Yeah. Yeah, because Schein was what, 93 when he died, so 50. Yeah.
Yep.
They were young bucks.
What was the name of the book?
I'll tell you in just a second. Let me find that.
It's always harder to find something when we're all watching.
Right.
Don't watch
Warren
him.
Bennis.
Okay.
Warren Bennis became a practitioner too. A damn good one. He ran a college.
I'll have to paraphrase. I just wanted to read it to you. Oh, here it is. I found it. So in the introduction, they start by saying, we wrote this book so that a wide audience could come to understand and evaluate a new and powerful educational medium, which we call laboratory training. We believe that this educational approach is an innovation which holds important practical potentials for the conduct of human affairs. We're even more certain that it can provide some important theoretical understanding of human and social processes of learning and change. They go on to say, under a section called Some Problems in Communicating the Idea of Laboratory Training. First of all, laboratory training does not fit into the conventional categories of education or therapy. It contains elements of both processes that maintains its uniqueness. Second, laboratory training is new. That's when this book is old, okay? Laboratory training is new. It started as recently as 1947 in Bethel, Maine. Since then, like most intellectual movements, it has moved along an erratic rhythm, injecting ideas into topsy-turvy way. Laboratory training is not and should not be construed as a monolithic entity. Instead, it is a rapidly growing and ever-changing enterprise. So this is an old book, right? They're talking about 1947. So we haven't been around, for, we've been, it seems like it's a long time ago, but it's not. So anyway, so I think that what I saw when I see what they did and what they wrote about back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s and 70s, it was grounded in evidence. They were exploring ideas. They were writing stuff up and they were sharing it. They were developing theoretical frameworks. They were using things. And so as I watched how we've talked about OD and C, or the field, or the other fields that kind of relate to it, over the last 20 years that I've been around, it's been a lot of practitioner-driven conversations where people have sort of talked about the academic side as being something wrong, or something wrong with it, or being out of touch or not relevant, and the academic side saying the same. But I haven't seen any group of doctoral or any group of faculty really sit down and say, we need to lead in getting this field revitalized or reimagined or something like. I didn't see that, and I kept thinking we do this thing in Baltimore, you know, or we do this thing in where they came together 3 years in a row. If you remember Baltimore, not like about 8 years ago or so, or back in another time and another time. And so I was thinking, well, what can shift this? Maybe if we can get doctoral programs to start producing people that can do action research and do applied research, and we start putting our heads together to let's revitalize the study of this work, and let's try to elevate the study of it. And let's try to create a fertile laboratory again, a renaissance of not the T groups, but of applied research. You know, applied in action research. And I watched the Tavistock group when I was there with them this summer, just last month. The way that the group talks about how they intervene, they use Bion's work, and they use others, you know, people, and they talk about coming into a setting, and they say, "What's your hypothesis? What's your action research hypothesis that you're bringing into the setting as a practitioner?" And it was kind of an odd way to think about it, right? But, you know, they're bringing in this notion of what is your intention, right? The hypothesis is an intention. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I don't know if this helps or if this adds or if I'm off, but I just keep thinking about how we can keep the conversation going so we can move towards something that elevates our practice at the next level, so that we can be on par with project management. So we can be, because project management, I don't know if you saw the link in the strategy document for OD programs, it was identified by the US Department of Labor as a legitimate job category in 2018. And what's happened in the last 5 years or so, it's like taken off. And then OD&C in our work is not listed. We're down, way down. We're listed as a footnote in the job listings category for the United States. OD is listed as sort of a subnote underneath training and development, which is underneath IO Psych. It's way down. It's just kind of a list of some things, right? So we're not established. We're not recognized. I mean, I have a 5-point plan that I think would like elevate us to another level as a field. But that's me.
Ryan.
Yeah.
I have to come in that the fact that project management was recognized in 2018 to me sounds just ridiculous based upon my view of the marketplace and the view of what's happening in organizations, because the discipline of project management in many ways at the practitioner level is denigrated, is that it is passé. And that had to that now that is now a profession. Just now it's recognized as a profession, but it's passé in terms of what's happening out in the real world. So maybe the vector is to say, okay, from an OD and change perspective, we need to leapfrog that and be in an emergent place. And how do we have a living body of knowledge as opposed to a static body of knowledge that is directly engaged with what is happening in the world?
Yeah. And a huge difference.
Yeah, I think we can do it. I think we need a consistent, intentional, structured approach to elevating our field. We've done it in too many navel-gazing, iterative fashions that get done and they go away, and they get done. Something gets talked about. What the biggest outcome from the Baltimore meetings was a definition of OD&C. And the definition isn't really better than any of the other ones that have been provided before it, but everybody wanted to have a definition, right? And that kind of thing. So, and they started proposing competencies, but the group that was proposing competencies, and they came up with a list of competencies. Now, Ryan, I don't know if you disagree with this. I believe we need a competency frame. We need to have a theoretical framework, a competency framework that will guide our teaching, so we can agree on what we're trying to teach. But the group that put it up there, and they created a list, and they started putting it up there as if it was an authority, they were not trained in how you thoughtfully and technically develop competency frameworks. And they were proposing a framework, right? So anyway, so it's muddled. So
How is I'm really surprised by a couple of things. One is how is something like OD is bottom of the list? Because OD is part of everything. Everything that I do, everything that other people do. It's a bit like saying, oh, management is not, management is just, not recognizing the importance of something so basic. We all do organizational development in one way or another. So I'm surprised at that. And the second thing that I wanted to say is, Steve, just before you came, I was just telling the group that we were talking about practitioner and academic groups helping each other and collaborating. And I was just explaining that I'm a part of an institute within an academic organization. University of Kent has an institute called Conflict Analysis and Research Center. And we are all practitioners there. And because they bring us there because they want us to look at people's PhDs and people's research projects and all of that from a practitioner point of view to make comments on whether that would work or not. But what is not mentioned there, the elephant in the, not maybe elephant in the room, but the very obvious thing is that I personally benefit from that interaction too. So someone yourself and others mentioned about, doing the academic, the academic research is being finger pointed at being not perhaps very grounded or very practical, etc., etc. But I also would like to finger point at myself and my colleagues to say that we also, because as a practitioner, it's very easy for me to lose the framework and, for example, field work and what others are doing, which is something that you guys know. So for me, I never see it as a one-way thing. It's definitely a two-way thing. We benefit from that too.
Yeah. And this is the from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is where we're mentioned. Industrial organizational psychologists. You can see any principles of psychology, human resource management, sales, marketing problems. Activities include planning, employee testing, selection, training and development, and organization development analysis. May work with management to organize the work setting to improve worker productivity. That's the only place we're mentioned.
I think the most telling mention of the things that we stand for, organization, development, and change, would come from practitioners who say, this is what the university is doing now. This is what they're teaching. This is what they're researching. So we're going to pay more attention. We need beacons, which I believe Bowling Green is right now. So the folks in the field will say, oh, they're doing some great stuff. And we need to get close to that. We need, like Ryan said, to feel included in the conversations that are generating great stuff. Back in the day, in the 50s and the 40s, it was sort of a great man thing. It was very smart people like the two you mentioned, Benison, and they'd get together and they'd form some ideas and then they'd get it out there. And great thinkers, the first thinkers. And they therefore gave their universities some better reputation because they were known in the field, not just in the research libraries. They were known in the field as to producing ideas that people could use. And when they used them, they saw better results. They were pragmatists in a way. And NTL and the laboratory was very much that sort of place. And I just think we could do the same thing again better. Just like Osmond says, connect a university and faculty in those universities with passionate practitioners like those who've come to publish in the CCL, and work that connection day and night as the advancing feature of the programs called doctorates in ODNC. Why are you different? Because we have a two-way pipeline. It's always full of fresh and new insights, and from a whole wide diversity of people out there. And I love what Yasmin said. Yes, we all do organization. Yashim said, we all do organization development. We all manage, we all lead, we all learn. It's just a matter of honoring that in a higher fashion, which essentially what the credential does. It says, this is a particularly smart person. Take her seriously. So, yeah, I'd love to see the elevation, but my hunch is some of that elevation, Steve, has not come from fellow universities who are somewhat jealous of any program. It's going to come from excited people in the field.
You know, Dave, I think I'm just going to say, I don't think it will. I think that the practitioners are so important. The action research oriented people out in the field, Dave, what I'm saying is what I think, Dave, is I've heard people say that since 1990 when I got kind of involved. And I've seen OD Network not get any ground, not make any progress. I've seen ISODC and IOTA, and the ODNC division has been, trickling down. And it's been trickling down in terms of membership as the practitioner participation has gone up in the ODNC division at the academy. The academics are leaving ODNC division and going to the other divisions. And I've been seeing the field and the programs all struggle. If we do not have a passionate group of higher education researchers whose full-time job is to study and advance the social and behavioral sciences in service to the field of ODNC, if we don't have that, we're not gonna be established. We're not going to be anywhere. So what I found is practitioners are busy, and the people in the field of ODNC are particularly good at giving away what they're good at. They give it away. They don't take care of themselves. They're in service to others. They believe in helping others. I believe in that. So they many of them tend not to take care of themselves in a professional way. And then I think in many cases, we now have a bunch of practitioners who are not willing to put evidence behind the work because they are focused on human relations, and they don't like statistics. They don't like research methods. They don't like doing the more analytical work to provide evidence behind it. One, because it costs a lot to do it and they don't get paid for it. Companies don't want to pay for program evaluation all the time. That's hard to get people to pay for that. And Tavistock is thriving, and their number one thing that they do is program evaluation. That's what they're known for. Okay. NTL is dying. It's known for T groups and facilitating workshops. Okay. It's not establishing itself as a program evaluation or evidence-based entity. So it's been struggling and has looked at going bankrupt and closing down, sold Bethel, Maine, sold it all, used the resources to continue to pay for offering workshops, not doing research, not doing program evaluation, and not getting out there and putting the evidence forward. Tavistock is doing better. So what I think is it's not an or. I think we've been doing it mostly with practitioner focus, and I don't think the practitioners have been in a place where they can follow through. They do the work, they do the conference, they do a summit, and then they have a flurry of conversations, and then it kind of fades away because nobody stays with it to follow through. I don't think it'll happen unless we get institutions of higher education to commit collectively to this. I just don't think it will happen. And
I see that. And the thing is, you mentioned the faculty who are walking away from the division. What are they doing? What are they saying with, walking away from the division?
No research, not enough evidence.
They're in one of the places where there's so much going on that they could never be bored, but they seem to want to walk into other divisions that have, as you say, higher levels of prestige that goes along with association with those divisions. Mm-hmm. So what it takes is faculty, universities who hire and develop faculty who will be able to do the studying you're talking about. And I look at the same person who says, I can work on a doctorate in a conventional, well-established field and get recognized and get some work, or I can work in a field that hasn't quite, from 1947, established itself as a profession.
Yeah.
And so it takes a person with courage and vision to want to do the latter. I think they're out there, but boy, I spent many years on search committees, Steve, as you have too. And the most interesting resumes got set aside for people who had conventional credentials.
Right. And that's
even
changing.
In our field of management, they're saying,
yeah,
we don't want a practitioner who's led and is a CEO of a major corporation because he hasn't written.
Yeah.
And so we set that person aside and bring in someone who's pumped out a dozen articles.
Ryan's going to have a heart attack.
And we don't want people with passion because they don't have the credentials, because they were too busy having a practice that was producing value for the world.
Right.
You know? And
yeah. So I have to go, and there's hope. I just want to say there's hope. And Tennyson, I've been watching you because you've been the most quiet. Okay. So I've been trying to read your body language to see where you're at. I think we're in tune, but I don't want to make sure that you're not checking out, because I think you're important to this.
I'll just offer one little piece, because we're in a big conversation right now. And so I'm trying to find, like, is there a cohering value or principle that lives within all of this as we play with a number of different things, right? And for me, I suppose one version of that is, it always has mattered, it always does matter, and it always will matter to have people good at what they do. And sometimes the good at what you do is from practice, or even a very small piece of practice. Sometimes the good at what you do is, I'm an academic and I research the shit out of things. And being able to have forums that bring people and groups together with what they are good at, so that we can be in learning and mystery together, that's a compelling part of being in the world to me.
Right on. And I'm so glad this is recorded.
Close of a cohering thought that I can find, you know.
Yep. And I think you're right. And I'll say because I have another meeting, but they'll wait for me just a couple minutes. I think we're on the edge of an opportunity to actually address this in a meaningful and productive way. And the reason for that is because for the first time in the history of humanity, the people over the age of 65 will be greater than the number of people under the age of 18 by 2030. And so right now, the people over the age of 45 or 40 are greater than the number of people under the age of 18. So that's one thing. Second, I'm watching our doctoral program. People are passionate about taking their lived experience and their professional experience, and they're passionate about leaving a legacy of knowledge and sharing knowledge. And they want to know how to do that. So I think I've been making a case that we need to have people getting professional doctorates who are lecturers in colleges talking to students and kids, but we need to have people that are also in their 40s and 50s who get academic doctorates that are doing research tier 1 research for the first time, because most people that do research are in their 20s. Their brains haven't even finished developing for that, by God. So in your tennis, I think the conversation still, I just see, I want to leave it. I think we're in a really good opportunity. I hope we can keep this conversation going, because if we can structure, like you said, Tennyson, so nicely, a coherent set of statements, a coherent framework, a coherent way of thinking about moving forward, I think we can get some traction and actually make something happen that's different than before. I don't think it's an or. I think there's an and it's like a multi-dimensional and. So Tennyson, I think you're right on about what you said, but I think everybody said something here that's really, since I was on, that really is relevant. So is this something that we can continue talking about? Is this something that you all would like to talk about? Is this, I mean, we shouldn't make every author jam about it, but is this something that you find
I think
relevant?
We continue the conversation, right? Like, we've opened up a big piece here, and there might be other things to keep following up with. This isn't one to have and drop and say, hey, let's move on and talk about daisies now. I think we've got something to follow in a lot of ways here. Yeah. And we have a natural forum for being able to do this, or at least this is one of the forums I'm
Right.
glad to be able to have the interaction for the very reasons that we're saying. Each of us comes with a certain set of passions, interests, questions, befuddlements. Having some spaces to encounter that together, that means a lot.
Yeah.
There's a
cool.
working
Thank you.
theory in that for me too.
Yeah.
You know,
I
The-
would like to
The
continue this
key is that we're authors as well. That's why we're in this
Should-
jam. So we're working both sides of the street. Go ahead, Yasmin.
No, I was going to say I would like to continue this conversation, particularly and maybe selfishly, about how academic work help practitioners. I think there isn't enough mention of that. I think there is too much mention on the other side, but I would really like to have this, because I have some big benefits that I have been receiving from my academic counterparts being a practitioner.
Wonderful. Good luck, Carol, at the Academy tomorrow.
Yeah. One of the things I'll do at the
Thanks,
academy is
everyone.
I'm going to be talking about this concept, since I've been using the doctoral initiative as a model for what could happen I've been talking to David Bright and others about a field reconfiguring initiative. And so I think it's at a higher level, and I see us maybe starting to think about a federation or some kind of United Nations version of people who care about this topic, and try to bring something together and see if the academy can support an initiative that would actually invite a whole bunch of different groups and people into a conversation about the future of this field, not as a field that tells people that they are OD, but as a field that can invite multiple fields into a conversation around the notion of change for good in our world. Right?
That's great.
So,
Great.
so I'll be pitching that a bit this time when I'm there myself,
Okay.
and I'll have more to share. So anyway, thanks all. I hope I'm doing okay. I feel like I came in and just talked a lot, so I don't feel, I don't know, I feel a little funky about how I came in.
You're okay. You're
Okay.
very helpful. And
We'll let you come back.
Okay,
Bring in
thank
the
you.
funk and be in the mystery.
Okay. Well, that helps my abandonment issues feel better, so I feel good. I love you all. I'll talk
Thanks
to you all
all.
later.
take care.
Appreciate
Bye.
it.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Lisa, for convening. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Lisa.
Mhm.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Nice
No
job.
problem.
Thank you, everyone. I also need to leave.
Mm.
But it'd be lovely to continue this conversation.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Have a good day.
Carol, you're on mute, but we want to hear from you because this started it.
Well, no, you started it, because I never would have mentioned it in that context. And Tennyson, as always, I really would value after the PDW. Steve isn't going to the PDW that he's initiated because he's doing the hooding at the doctoral program.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I'm doing it with two other people. And I think it's the launch of what he's really envisioning. And it would be invaluable to have this as another forum to integrate with it. So maybe we could have I don't know, I don't want to take up time, but maybe we could schedule something that was a debrief of what happened and see where it fits.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear after you get done, Carol.
Would you be
what
willing,
learned.
Tennyson?
Sure. I'll jump in and play and try to contribute.
You always do. And Lisa, your perspective is so interesting. And I'm going to end with this. At least 15 years ago, when I was in your shoes, because I was a corporate person who went back to get a doctorate because I wanted to learn how people learned.
Nice
We've
statement.
had the same conversation about learning.
Yep.
And somebody said there should be a C-suite job for learning, and everybody laughed. And now we have chief learning officers.
That's right.
And the academy started what has been an unbelievably well-received line in the academy, a journal of learning.
That's right.
And that has practical work in it.
Mm.
It was a real tough uphill battle. So I wonder, and it was led by practitioners, right? It was led by people in the academy who didn't have PhDs, but had EDDs. And that's just as rigorous a field applied to how people learn.
Mhm.
So maybe there's something provocative about what you said of coherence, Tennyson,
Mm.
that is supporting what Steve wants, but in a slightly different way of both ends, and really engaging the practitioners. Rather, it's
So-
both sides.
What I'd ask is that if
Mm.
you initiate that, Carol, with Tennyson and whomever else, that you include me from the standpoint of, as a community manager here with Steve,
There's no question.
that we can build on it, because what I'm interested in is, which is interesting because I manage a technical team essentially, is just to make sure that we have the ways to connect to each other to keep that conversation going, and it isn't just a bunch of islands,
The
that we land on,
only
or we
reason-
don't go and get anywhere. Yeah.
That's a given, because the only reason why I am doing this is because I'm connected to this program and to Steve.
Sure.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be involved in this initiative.
Sure. And then we've got to add others, right? We get a concept and then share it and infect others. So
Exactly.
Okay.
thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thanks for letting me harangue. It's great to talk with you guys.
Thanks
Good
for
luck.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. go
Thank
well,
you
folks.
all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.